Good evening. My name is Wayne Larson. I'm the Communications and Marketing Director for the City of Mesquite, and this is a public meeting to discuss and share information about our upcoming election on proposed changes to our city charter. We're going to have a brief presentation in just a moment, but a couple housekeeping items. There's restrooms back down the hall. As you probably can see, the cameras, we are videotaping this public meeting and all of the comments so that we can share them with the public on our website and other communication vehicles. If you do have a question of staff, if you wouldn't mind stepping to the microphone there in the middle aisle so we can capture your comments for the videotaping and share that with the rest of the community, that would be great. If you didn't pick up, we have a brochure available. It's got all the information about the proposed changes to the city charter, both in English and Spanish, and also all of the dates for voting and all of the locations. And there's also a website address in there if you'd like more information about the charter election. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Ted Chin. He is with our city manager's office, and he'll have a brief presentation, which will include a short video, and then we'll field any questions that you might have about this charter election. So, Ted?
Thank you all for being here. This presentation is about proposed changes to the city charter. There's, like you're going to see, is a charter election May 5th. So just want to preface by saying that state law is very specific when it comes to the use of public resources to advocate one position or another with regard to these elections. So this presentation is only going to present facts. Okay, it's not going to advocate one position versus another. It's just going to be a factual presentation. So before we get started here and talk about the charter, it's good to know that there are two types of city governments in Texas. One is general law cities. Those are cities that are generally under 5,000 in population, and the municipal powers are derived specifically from state law. Okay, those cities can only do things that are explicitly allowed by state law. On the other hand, Mesquite is a home rule city, and those are cities that once they reach a population threshold of 5,000, the people in the community can hold an election to create a home rule charter. And basically what that does is give the city powers to self-control or self-rule. And in those powers, they can do anything that's enumerated by the charter, as long as it doesn't conflict with state law or federal law. So one is state law tells them what you can do, and the other one is you can do what you want to do as long as it doesn't conflict with state law. So Mesquite's charter is the governing document of the home rule city, often referred to as the city's constitution because it enumerates certain powers to the government. And our charter was adopted by the voters back in 1953. And specifically those the charter establishes the city's form of government and its powers. It establishes controls over the city government, such as elections, and it establishes the means for financing city operations. It also spells out certain procedures for the council, boards and commissions, and those things. Since 1953, Mesquite has held 7 charter amendment elections, and of those 7 elections, there was 53 changes or amendments to the charter that were proposed, and 41 of those had been passed. While other charter elections have been discussed since then. Really, there hasn't been a charter election, or amendment rather, since 1987. So it's been 30 years since the charter was last amended. So here is how the proposed charter amendments were placed before the voters. The City Council may, on its own motion, propose a charter amendment election, or citizens may call for an election by a petition of 5% of qualified voters, or 20,000 qualified voters, whichever is less. In our case, what we're talking about today is the City Council proposed a charter election and created a charter review committee. They did that by resolution back on August 7th. The committee was comprised of an appointed member by each member of the City Council, and also the Council appointed 2 liaisons to the committee to serve as ex officio or non-voting members. And the City Council charged that committee to conduct 5 public hearings, with 1 in each of the council districts and 1 at City Hall. The council also charged them to facilitate and participate in public discussions regarding potential charter amendments, and to meet as a committee to discuss citizen input on the proposed charter amendments. They were then tasked to prepare a report on the sense of the community based upon input on those meetings, and also an online city survey. And then they were to submit a report on the sense of the community to the city manager by November 30th of last year, which they did. And based on that report, the City Council approved presenting 8 proposed amendments to the city charter. Early voting on the city charter amendments begins Monday on the 23rd and runs through May 1st, with Election Day being Saturday, May 5th. Some facts about the charter election that you may want to consider before you vote is, 1, a charter can only be amended every 2 years. Okay, so after this election, the next opportunity for a charter amendment election would be 2 years from now. Each charter amendment, there's 8 of them, but each charter amendment may only contain 1 subject matter, and each amendment is voted separately. So you've got a slate of 8 amendments on the ballot. One doesn't necessarily fail because another one passed, or vice versa. Each one is voted on separately. And once an amendment to the charter is adopted, it may only be changed by another charter amendment election 2 years from now or later. And with that, we have a brief video that will summarize the election process, and it also describes in better detail the proposed amendments, and also offers additional resources for you to learn about this election. So with that, we'll run the video.
Overview of the City Charter election. In 2017, the Mesquite City Council approved a review of the City Charter. The City Charter is the governing document of the City of Mesquite. As part of the review process, the City Council created a Charter Review Committee. The committee held a series of public input meetings. For more information on the City Charter Review process and the Charter Review Committee report, please visit cityofmesquite.com/city charter. Based on the results of the review, the City Council voted to place proposed changes to the City Charter before the voters. For information on the charter election, voting dates, voting locations, and more, please visit cityofmesquite.com/charter election. Early voting, April 23rd through May 1st. Election Day, May 5th. Proposition A, establishing a maximum number of terms for City Council members and the mayor. Currently, members of the City Council, including the mayor, can serve an unlimited number of 2-year terms. Proposed change. A City Council member would be limited to 4 consecutive 2-year terms without taking a 2-year break in service. The mayor would be limited to 4 consecutive 2-year terms without taking a 2-year break in service. No person could serve as a city council member and as mayor for more than 8 consecutive 2-year terms without taking a 2-year break in service. These new term limit rules would apply to existing members of the city council, including the mayor. Fiscal impact. No fiscal impact is anticipated if this proposed amendment is approved at the election. Proposition B, City Council structure. Currently, the City Council has 7 members, with 4 who represent specific geographic districts and 3 others, including the mayor, who represent the entire city. All members of the City Council, including the mayor, are voted on at large by all voters in the city, regardless of where those voters reside within the city. City district boundaries are reviewed and adjusted, if needed, every 3 years. Proposed change. 6 geographical areas or districts would be created with 1 city council member representing each district. Only voters residing within a specific district would vote for the city council member representing that district. Council members representing a district would be required to reside in that district. The mayor would represent the entire city and would be elected by all voters in the city. District boundaries would be reviewed every 10 years and, based on the results of the U.S. Census, revised if needed. Fiscal impact. If this proposed amendment is approved at the election, there would be an estimated cost of $50,000 to $75,000 in fiscal year 2019 to redraw council district boundaries. In addition, there may be an additional cost of $25,000 to $50,000 if the districts need to be redrawn with any successive decennial census. Proposition C, date of City Council election. Currently, city elections are held in May of each year, and City Council members and the mayor serve staggered terms. Place numbers 1, 2, 6, and the mayor are elected in odd number years. Place numbers 3, 4, and 5 are elected in even number years. Proposed change. City elections would be held in November of odd number years, and all members of the City Council, including the mayor, would be elected in the same year. Fiscal impact. No fiscal impact is anticipated if this proposed amendment is approved at the election. Proposition D, minimum staffing level in police department. Currently, the City of Mesquite is required to staff a minimum of 1.5 police officers for every 1,000 residents of the city. Proposed change. The City of Mesquite would be required to staff a minimum of 1.6 police officers for every 1,000 residents of the city. Fiscal impact. There is no immediate fiscal impact if this proposed amendment is approved at the election. However, based on current staffing levels and population projections, the proposed staffing requirement would begin to impact the city's operating budget in 2023, 6 years earlier than the current charter requirement of 1.5, and could cost an estimated $3 million by the year 2040. Proposition E, establishing a city attorney's office. Currently, while the City Code establishes a city attorney's office, there is no such provision in the city charter. Other officers appointed by the City Council are established by the city charter. In addition, there is no provision recognizing that the city attorney supervises and controls assistant city attorneys. Proposed change. The office of the city attorney would be established by the city charter. The amendment would provide that the city attorney supervises and controls assistant city attorneys. Fiscal impact. No fiscal impact is anticipated if this proposed amendment is approved at the election. Proposition F, deletion of the 1-year contract period limitation. Currently, the charter limits contracts for goods, materials, services, or supplies to 1 year. Proposed change. The charter would not limit contracts for goods, materials, services, or supplies to 1 year, allowing multi-year contracts for goods, materials, services, and supplies. Fiscal impact. No fiscal impact is anticipated if this proposed amendment is approved at the election. Proposition G, amendments to conform to actual current practices. Currently, language in one provision of the charter creates a potential internal conflict, while other language was created under state law that has changed. Current practices have been established to reconcile the conflict and to update practices in accordance with amended state law. The provisions in the charter addressed by this proposition include the following. City Council voting and meeting requirements, municipal court name, jurisdiction, fines, and authorized officiants, and the appointment requirements related to service on the city's Personnel Board. Proposed change. The charter would be amended to conform to current practices for the following: City Council voting and meeting requirements, municipal court name, jurisdiction, fines, and authorized officiants, and the appointment requirements related to service on the city's Personnel Board. Fiscal impact. No fiscal impact is anticipated if this proposed amendment is approved at the election. Proposition H. Technical amendments to conform to state law and city code, to correct terms, to correct spelling, to clarify language, to provide gender-neutral references, and to make other technical amendments. Currently, the city charter contains language that refers to outdated state law and contains incorrect terms, misspellings, outdated or obsolete references, gender-specific terminology, and technical errors. Proposed change. References to outdated state law, language containing incorrect terms, misspellings, outdated or obsolete references, gender-specific terminology, and technical errors would be updated or corrected. Fiscal impact. No fiscal impact is anticipated if this proposed amendment is approved at the election. The notice of election will be available on April 12th at cityofmesquite.com/charter election, which will include the proposed text changes to the city charter.
Here's the webpage link that we've created for you to obtain more information on the election, voting locations, and other things. You can also access the Charter Review Committee's process, including videos that were taken of those public meetings, so that you can learn more about what their line of thinking was at the time, because I can't speak to that. And at this time, I would entertain any questions that I might be able to answer. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Elizabeth Wally, live in Mesquite, and I had two questions. One is about Proposition B on fiscal impact. You said that currently the city reviews boundaries for council districts every 3 years. And the proposed change is to redistrict every 10 years. And yet there's a fiscal impact cited here for the every 10-year change, but no savings from not having to review every 3 years. And I was wondering about that.
Yes. The cost for fiscal year 2019 is the if the proposition passes,
Yes.
it would require the district's boundaries to be redrawn.
Right.
And we would engage a firm that does this type of thing in relation to the Voting Rights Act, making sure that the district boundaries are drawn where they don't discriminate, age, race, ethnicity, that kind of thing. That would need to take place before the November 2019 election, where all the council members would be elected. And then the reason why it's every 10 years thereafter is because it's based on census data. Every 10 years, the federal government releases the census. So then you'd have to revisit those boundaries to see if population or demographic changes required the boundaries to be redrawn in a certain pattern.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was just wondering why the cost isn't offset by savings from not having to review the district boundaries every 3rd year, as we're currently doing, so I understand.
The cost impact only looks at what we're doing now, current practice, and what that change would entail.
But the change would also include not having to review every 3 years. It seems to me like there would be savings from not having to review every 3 years that would also be calculated into fiscal impact.
Yeah, I'm not following.
It's currently
different process that we follow. We do not hire a consultant to have to redraw according to these voting rights districts. So we don't incur that cost right now every 3 years.
So you say it would be more expensive to do the 10-year redistricting than our current.
Correct. We would have to hire outside assistants. Currently, we're able to do the current district boundaries in-house.
I see. Okay, the other question that I had was also on fiscal impact of Proposition D. And it said that there was no fiscal impact. No, not D, I guess it's C. Right now, we have a city election for city council members every May. We also there are elections in November to vote on, of odd-numbered years, to vote on state constitutional amendments. It seems to me that if we were to discontinue having our city election every May and instead have one election every other November in conjunction with the state constitutional amendments, that there would be savings. And I was wondering why there
Right.
no savings cited here.
That would be true if the November elections were in even years. But because they're in odd years,
Right.
Based on information that we have from our city secretary's office, the cost would be double what a normal election would be. So that savings is basically, it's a wash.
No. Tell me why the cost would be double to have an election in November as compared to May?
We contract with Dallas County, and so even though there's an election going on, we still incur those costs. And because there are more, I believe it's more polling places, there are more places that we have to, the county has to staff. So the cost is greater than what we would have just during our own municipal election. Statewide elections have more polling places than we do for local elections.
Okay. And does not somebody share the cost of the state constitutional amendments with us? I mean, is the county sharing the cost or the state sharing the cost for those?
The county charges us basically a fee per election, and it's based on the number of polling places. You would assume that the information that the county gave us is this is what it would cost us to hold a municipal election every other year in November. So we're basing the cost estimate based on the information the county gives us.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I have several questions, so bear with me, please. If approved at the ballot box on Proposition B, how long is the process? And is it my understanding that not only do you have to hire a demographer to draw the new district lines, but you also have to get the federal government to approve those district lines?
The first part, I believe, is correct. The second, I would defer to our city attorneys, but it's my understanding that we are no longer, it's a mandated, I forget what they call it, where you have to go through the, yeah, I asked that question earlier when I was looking at the fiscal impacts, and there's a certain process under the Voting Rights Act. If you can help me out, because it's been a while since I visited that. What were they called?
The pre-clearance requirements?
Pre-clearance, yeah. The Texas is no longer has to have a pre-clearance on these things.
So it doesn't have to go through the Justice Department?
Correct.
Okay.
For example, for this election, we did not have to get pre-clearance to have the propositions put on the ballot.
There was a recent ruling or something.
Yeah, Shelby v. Holder, it
Yeah.
was several years ago now.
Yeah.
Maybe I should review the information real quickly and try to get back to you in a minute.
Yeah,
Okay.
Here it is. It's in my
Thanks.
That would be
It's been
great.
so
Thank
long.
you.
I just knew that, didn't have to do that.
So you say that the total cost to the city initially for 2019 to redraw the district lines would be somewhere in the amount of $50,000 to $75,000.
Right, and where we got that information was based on a firm that has done similar things with other cities in the Metroplex.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it also my understanding that if the demographics change and someone applies to have the districts redrawn sooner than the 10 years, that the city would also have to do the same process? They would have to hire someone to go out and do the demographic survey in order to redraw the lines?
You mean if somebody was challenge it on the basis of discriminatory
Yeah,
or something like that?
So say you have a pocket of minorities that move to a certain district that basically skews the demographics in that district, and it's challenged at the city level, then you would have to go through the same process, and you wouldn't necessarily wait the 10 years. You would have to do it every 2 years.
For the purposes of this fiscal impact, and by the way, I came up with these fiscal impacts based on information that was available. I only did it in such a manner where it didn't really go down every what-if scenario and subjective scenario. It was basically.
But it is a possibility that it would cost roughly the same amount. It could cost every 2 years.
If what you're saying is true, I don't know.
Okay.
I'd only looked at the analysis in an objective, verifiable, and tried not to interject any subjective or interpretation of what might happen down the road.
But it could be an additional cost to the city
I do
every
not-
2 years.
I don't know, because I didn't anticipate things being challenged.
Well,
What
if
they
you
are
hire a
challenged or not?
firm and they do a one-time
Right.
demographic survey, and
At a
then 2
minimum.
years later, you have to redo a demographic survey, it would seem to me they're not going to do it for free, they're going to charge the same amount.
If that were to happen, and again, I didn't do the research, if what you're saying is true, and if that happened, yes. I
Okay.
would suppose there would be, but again, I did not include in the fiscal
Okay, but I'm
impact
just
every what
laying
if.
out a scenario that it could happen.
If what you're saying is true, I don't know about the challenges and all that, and having to go back and revisit the boundaries.
Did the 2010 census indicate that Mesquite has large pockets of minority group concentration?
I do not know that. And even so, the words that you use are subjective and qualifying, which I couldn't attach to whatever data is out there anyway.
Well, it's been part of the study line. That would probably be possible to do, but I mean, just years of living here, that's one thing we've always held and seems to be true, that there are no concentrations in particular areas.
Again, that's a subjective opinion which I can't qualify.
I'm Cindy Steiner with the City Attorney's Office, and those kinds of determinations are the reason that studies are done to verify in their whole systems, programs to make those determinations. We really aren't going to be prepared to anticipate what the facts are.
I know, and I guess what I'm getting to is, where's the necessity for single-member districts? And who put it on the ballot? I mean, where did this come from?
The City Council approved the propositions by ordinance.
It's not just to provide opportunities for racial minorities. It's for any kind of interest group, like the people in.
Not when you read the studies, it isn't.
Okay. I will tell you that preclearance is not required, and the city and government entities are subject to the Voting Rights Act and challenge, regardless of whether we have single-member districts. In other words,
Correct.
so I guess one of your points was we would have to redraw if we're challenged, and that would be true at any time under any voting system. We're subject to the Voting Rights
That's
Act.
right.
So there's,
But I guess what I'm trying to get to is the current system that we have now. I am allowed every year to either vote for 4 or 3 of my representatives.
Right.
If we pass Proposition B, I will be allowed to vote for only 2 every 2 years.
that's correct.
So, given that we know that cities that have large pockets of minorities or demographics, different demographics, if they have a large pocket of minorities in specific areas, then single-member districts benefit that city. Given that we don't seem to have large pockets in Mesquite, and you're going to reduce the number of governing officials that I get to vote for, I would like to know what is the background and what is the historical information that leads the council to believe that we need to have single-member districts.
We cannot advocate positions one way or another today. It's a healthy conversation and question. You might talk to your council member, your representatives. We're really just here to give you factual information.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm asking for. What was the factual information that led them to pass an ordinance for single-member districts?
I don't know what was in their minds when they took their vote. I was sitting in the audience. That I can't
So
speculate.
they don't have any historical information, is what you're telling me?
Well, you could go, all of the council meetings are
I've
online.
watched them.
If you've watched, then you've seen everything that I have.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a lot of sentiment in favor in the meetings, to the charter amendment consideration, the meetings that we had, the public.
I have watched the public
And-
hearings.
And I, for example, live in a particular part of Mesquite that has, particular needs where, most of the property in my area is a certain age, the streets are in a certain condition, we have a certain level of crime, where I have a certain income group, we have certain needs for shopping, access to transportation and so forth. And I personally would like somebody to fight for my part of town, for my interests. And I know that there are other parts of town where the priorities are different, as far where crime is concerned, where the street conditions, and so forth. And I think it would be, rather than having a council member who's trying to answer to the majority of the city on every single issue, to have a council member that was very familiar with my area and that was an advocate for my interests, sounds appealing to me.
So you're setting up a feudal system.
No, I'm setting up an advocacy system.
That's the same thing,
Okay, well,
essentially.
So you're going to have one council member fighting with 5 other council members for the same funds for their particular area.
I want somebody to advocate for my area, to articulate, to understand.
But one vote doesn't change anything.
Okay, that is why, I'm just telling you, that is why it sounds attractive to
And
me.
I gotta tell you, attending those meetings, being a member of the committee, there was not an overwhelming response in favor of single-member districts.
It wasn't an overwhelming, because that was not the
We had a
overwhelming.
total of, 38 to 40 people showed up, and it was about 42, 48, or 40, 52, 48 split, or 42, 56, whatever the
Right.
split was. And that out of 72,000 registered voters.
Okay,
And now we decide that's the majority
Yeah.
of people favor.
I think for the purpose of this meeting, we don't want to get into open floor debate on the pros and cons of a certain proposition.
Can I
We're
finish
just
my
here to
questions?
state the facts as we
Okay.
know them.
Can I
and
finish
not-
my question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All right, so if we are to assume that an overwhelming majority of whoever participated, whether it be in the public meetings or by survey that the city sent out, can you tell me what the numbers were of the 72,000 registered voters, can you tell me the number of people that were in favor of single-member districts?
That survey information is available on the city's website.
You don't know offhand?
I do not know offhand.
Okay?
Well, if the people, I mean, it's an election, it's putting it out there for a vote. If the people don't like it, they'll just vote it down. I mean, that's the way it works.
If you don't mind, I'll answer the questions that she's asking.
Okay, given that districting is a very complex process requiring significant demographic, statistical information, and legal work to ensure that each district is made up of as close to an equivalent number of persons as possible, is it fair to say that if the ballot initiative passes, the city would have to hire the demographic expert to determine the correct balance of population of each single-member district, and these districts would not necessarily be drawn based on geographic or neighborhood lines?
I'm not sure about your conclusions in that question, but yes, we would have to hire a firm to do that analysis.
But is it fair to say that they would not be drawn along neighborhood lines?
I can't make a comment on an assumption or a conclusion without knowing the facts myself.
Okay. Is it also fair to say that these districts are also subject to change based on population shifts over time?
I think that would be fair to say, yes.
Okay. If there are shifts in population, say, for example, the city annexes a significant amount of land in Kaufman County, would that trigger another redrawing of a single-member district line at another cost to the city?
Possibly. Again, I can't speculate on something
I'm not asking you to speculate, I'm just saying, if that were to happen.
I don't know, because I don't know what the demographic changes would entail.
But it could,
Anything's possible, yes.
okay? So, again, currently, I have the ability to elect 7 representatives. And you're asking me to now, the city, if it passes, the city would limit my election ability to 2 persons, a mayor and my specific district representative.
And I would rephrase that to say the voters would approve that, or not the city.
Is it reduced or not?
If the voters approve it, you would vote for the mayor at large and whatever council member resides in the district that you reside in.
Okay, so that's from 7 to 2.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions that I can dance around? Again, the state law really hamstrings me from commenting on pros or cons of any proposition, because you'll only hear the pros or maybe you'll only hear the cons, and it makes it appear like I'm advocating. All right, well, we certainly appreciate you appearing tonight and learning more about the charter election. Again, visit our website. There's a lot more information in there, including the videos of the committee and their work. Thank you.